Perfect. Hey, what's going on, guys? I've got my first 6.5 Creedmoor reloading video. The rifle I was using to shoot the 6.5 Creedmoor is this Uintah Precision UPR-10, and this is a bolt-action AR-10 upper. Really cool design. It's actually made here in Utah. It uses a 26-inch Schillen barrel with a 1 1/8 twist. Awesome shooting gun. So I'm trying to make some rounds. I'm starting off basically with the bread and butter of the 6.5 Creedmoor, and that's the 140 grain ELD-Match by Hornady. Hornady actually helped create this round, so I think using their ELD bullet is a good way to go. The three powders that I've chosen to start with are Hodgdon Hybrid 100V, H4350, which is a known favorite of many reloaders for 6.5 Creedmoor, and H4351SC. My goal is to find an alternate powder to H4350 because where I'm at this time, it's really hard to get a hold of. I've searched and searched the gun stores and very rarely have I come across some. So, by the end of this series, I'm hoping to have another powder alternate that works similar to H4350. Will get you good tight groups, get you good velocity. Let's take a look at what I loaded up today. Also, what I was igniting these powders with are the Federal Premium Gold Medal Match primers. The ones on the left here are the standard Gold Medal Match primers, and on the right, these are the large Magnum rifle. I only use the Magnum primers with Hybrid 100V. The brass that I used for this video was from Atlas Development Group. These guys are pretty new to the market. They've got lots of years of experience across all their employees though, and a few of them actually helped invent some of the very common calibers. So, talking about this brass in particular, this is their 6.5 Creedmoor, and you can see the annealing on the necks. The color might not come through as well, but in real life, it's easy to tell that these have definitely been annealed. This brass is their large rifle primer pocket. I know that they have a small rifle primer pocket in the works, as well as 6 Creedmoor. These guys make brass for many great cartridges, so be sure to check them out at atlasdg.com. After I get a few more reloadings under my belt with these, I'm going to talk about the quality and consistency that I find, see how the primer pockets hold up, because these guys use a different method than most people do, which work hardens the brass to hopefully make it last longer. So I'm going to run these pretty hot a few times and see how they hold up. We'll take a quick look at the primer side of my fired brass. So I used 3 different powders and I used 3 different charges of each powder. Over here is where the H4350 charges were. No pressure signs to be seen. These middle 3 are from Hybrid 100V. This seems to be the highest pressure round I had, and you can see how the primer just comes out just a tad. This is pretty common with the 6.5 Creedmoors, and this is actually the second Uintah Precision rifle that I've shot, and both of them have that same mark. Even on factory ammo it appears, so I'm not worried about that as a pressure sign. I can watch that to see if pressure is increasing or if it's a very mellow charge. But it seems to do it with almost all of the brass that I fire. Finally, on the right, we have some H4351SC. This stuff seems to be nothing at all. That's pretty mellow charge. As we get into the velocities in a minute, that was a pretty mellow charge. So let's take a look at these groups. Now this rifle is brand new, and today was my first trip out with it. So in hopes of not skewing the results of the groups, I loaded up about 18 rounds to foul up the barrel. And I used Hornady brass on this. As we take a look here, very mellow charge. It's not really showing anything on that primer right there, and these all look really fine. So I fired 18 rounds through the barrel to get it fouled up in hopes of getting better consistency and basically getting that barrel a little bit broken in, ready to start shooting some groups. Here's a quick look at a group that my wife shot. She very rarely shoots precision rifles, but I thought she did pretty well. This is a 100-yard group with just some ammo that I threw together. I didn't like weigh out these charges to the specific grain or anything. I was pretty much throwing the charge, making sure it wasn't anything crazy on the scale, and then dumping it right into the case. So this is going to be 38 grains of Hybrid 100V. with the Magnum large rifle primer. Now this is the first group that I shot, so 0.647 inch spread right there. This is an 8-shot group and I had 1 flyer. So I don't remember if this was me pulling the trigger or if this one just kind of came apart from the group. Regardless, for 8 shots, making a 7-shot, 1 ragged hole group, I'm really stoked on that. You're shooting awesome, and I was really excited to see that right out of the gate. Now let's take a look at all the real charges and all the load data that I was coming up with. My muzzle velocity average was 2573 with a standard deviation of 16.4, and that's across all 8 shots. So really mellow charge. You're not going to be going too wild here, but it is a very accurate loading. So I may end up looking into that later if I'm just kind of going for bench rest precision. Now here's the first official, very carefully weighed out charge that I shot with this. This is using Hybrid 100V. I loaded up 39 grains even, and the muzzle velocity averaged 2666 feet per second with a standard deviation of 16. The way that I'm measuring my groups, I've changed up my method a little bit. I measure left to right spread, and that would be the top number here, 0.916, and then top to bottom spread, 1.972. So then I add these together and divide it by 2, creating the average. So the average spread right here is 1.44. So we'll just call this a 1.44 MOA group. Not the greatest thing. Apparently this rifle does not like 39 grains of Hybrid 100V. So let's move on to the next charge. All right, now that we've moved up to 40 grains of Hybrid 100V, we got a nice tight 3-shot group, and 1 flyer seemed to come out of there a little bit. So again, the average between the left to right and top to bottom spread came out to be 0.77 MOA. These were all shot at 100 yards with the 140 grain ELD-M Hornady bullet. All right, here's the group with 41 grains of Hybrid 100V. As you can see, 3 again grouped fairly well, and then I had 1 flyer. So the average on this group turned out to be 1.02, just over an inch average. Muzzle velocity was 2834 with a standard deviation of 11.2. That's a pretty good standard deviation, and also that's excellent velocity. This will make a great long-range shooting round. I might test some more of these to see if I can get more consistent groups like these. That could just be a flyer from this group, so it's possible that this is a great shooting round with high muzzle velocity. This is something I would really consider for long-range shooting. Now this powder is a little bit slower on the burn rate chart. However, it's given excellent consistency in things like 7mm rem mag. So I know that this powder is supposed to be good for calibers like that, but there's also load data available for the 6.5 Creedmoor. I had some on my shelf. Why not try it? And on the first group with this 42 grain charge, wow, this thing's coming out of the gate strong. That's a very tight group. Unfortunately, the muzzle velocity is pretty slow. So 2586 average, but a standard deviation of 7. That's excellent right there. The average group size is 0.42 inches. So that's shooting excellent out of this gun. You got a nice tight 3-shot group there, 1 hole, and then you had 1 just outside of that. And I'm definitely really excited with how that shot. All right, moving up 1 grain, we are now up to 43 grains with the 4831 SC. Muzzle velocity has gone up to 2626, standard deviation of 22.9. That opened up a bit, but still that's not horrible. It's not really what I want to see, but I've seen worse. So the average group size here, 1.08, and they're kind of spread out. They're not really grouping all that great. So I think this has kind of come out of an accuracy node, and I don't really think that I would have good luck trying 43 grains again. Here we go with 44 grains of 4831. Muzzle velocity is up to 2666, standard deviation of 7.2. That's another excellent standard deviation from this powder. I now know why this powder has a great reputation. This is actually the first time I've shot this stuff, and so I'm glad to see the excellent performance that I'm getting. It is also part of Hodgdon's Extreme line, which means that it's supposed to be temperature insensitive. If I continue to go forward with this powder, we will be testing that at a later point. The spread on this group averaged out to be 0.65. It's a little bit taller than that, but it's a pretty narrow shot, so that helped bring the average down. As you can see here, The number on top is left to right, the number on the left is top to bottom. But excellent group and decent velocity here with a great standard deviation. There were also no pressure signs here, so I could increase the charge. However, when I was reloading these, I could feel just a little bit of powder crunch when I was seating the bullets, so this is a pretty full case at this point. And we are now to H4350, the favorite for the 6.5 Creedmoor. Let's see if it stands up to its reputation. So, starting off with 39 grains, our muzzle velocity, it was 26.68 with a standard deviation of 20. Now, my powder scale is not the greatest in the world right now. It's very possible that I don't get these absolutely perfect charge weights. I will be upgrading that really soon, so unfortunately I can't really trust my powder scale to be perfect, but it does a decent job, and as it shows right here, we're getting an average of 0.66 inch group. So not bad at all. I'm not really complaining, but just be aware that my digital scale is kind of not the greatest, so I will be upgrading that, and hopefully that will help shrink down my groups with any powder that I try. Moving up to 40 grains with H4350, our muzzle velocity goes to 27.37, standard deviation of 10. That's a great standard deviation right there, and the group is decent. You got these three trying to group fairly okay, and then you have one sort of flyer out here. It's an okay looking group. It's not my favorite of the day, but it did come in with a great average overall of 0.82 inches at 100 yards. So shooting under MOA, I'm never going to complain if I'm getting sub MOA. So these are shooting pretty good. Also, our muzzle velocity is climbing pretty quick, and we're definitely going to need that if I'm going to be out shooting long range with this 6.5 Creedmoor. All right, here's our final charge of 41 grains with H4350. As you can see, I've written a lot of things out here. What happened is the sun started to get into the sensor for my chronograph, and it started messing with my readings. As you can see over here, it read extremely low for what this charge should be, and it said I got a 2642. That's a lot lower than it should be. And then a 2978. This thing's out of its mind. I'm not shooting a 140 grain bullet 3,000 feet a second with a 6.5 Creedmoor, even if I do have a 26-inch barrel. So the two numbers that I kept out of this are 2867 and 2825. Those seem to be on par with where this should be. So unfortunately, I had to take these out, which just left it down to two numbers for a standard deviation. I just decided I don't need a standard deviation for this group. But the average between those two numbers is 2846. That's good muzzle velocity. That's moving out of that barrel. So you're definitely going to be able to shoot long range with this. Looking at the group, we got a 4-shot group here. I believe we had 2 fly into that hole right there. And then the outlying 2 bullets are basically the same. I wouldn't call either one of them a flyer of the group. It's looking awesome, and it averaged out to a 0.53. All right, so we've checked out each group individually. Now let's kind of take a recap and look at these muzzle velocities again. Something I want to point out, Hybrid 100V and H4350, I used the same charge weights, and I got almost the exact same muzzle velocities. So right here with 39 grains, 2666, with 4350, 2668 with 39 grains. That's really close. Moving up to the high charge of 41 grains. Now the data is skewed a little bit. It's at 2846, but if we look at Hybrid 100V, we're at 2834, which is very close. Depending on the chronograph, how well it's going to read, I would say that that's basically the same, honestly. If I just had more bullets to shoot, they would probably end up averaging pretty close to the same. Now, as far as consistency with muzzle velocity, 4831 had a great showing with a standard deviation of 7 and another one down here of 7, beating out 4350's 20 with a 10, which is good, and then no standard deviation here. So I think 4831 is going to give you the most consistent muzzle velocity. Unfortunately, it's just not coming out of the barrel as fast as Hybrid 100V or 4350 is. Now my considerations for long range shooting, I need to have good muzzle velocity, and because I shoot in the Utah desert where it can get down to 10 degrees all the way up to 110 degrees, I would really like temperature and sensitivity. And then thirdly, I definitely need the round to be accurate to shoot long range. So that's what I'm looking for in a powder. All three of those things, but it's kind of hard to come up with that. Hybrid 100V is not an extreme powder. It will shoot accurately and it does shoot quickly, but it's not an extreme powder like H4350 is. The thing Hybrid has going for it is when I show up to a gun store, I can find this. That stuff is hard to find. Everybody's after it because 6.5 Creedmoor responds so well to 4350. So Hybrid 100V, definitely consider it if you can't find that. It's not a bad replacement. You can get similar velocities and pretty good standard deviations. H4350 seemed to beat it out just a bit in the standard deviation department. However, Hybrid 100V was extremely consistent across all the charge ranges of having about a 15 to 20 standard deviation. Now, finally, out of all these groups, what I did is I took all of their averaged, and then I averaged all of their groups. So that's what this number is right here. Hybrid 100V, out of all the groups I shot, averaged 1.07, so just outside of 1 MOA. Not a bad showing for the first time out. H4351 actually edged out Hybrid 100V with a 0.71 average, and that's pretty damn good, especially considering its extreme spreads and standard deviations. But again, it's not quite as fast. It's just not the ideal powder for this specific bullet. It is a good alternative and would probably make a good bench rest powder if you're not trying to shoot long range and try to really stretch it out there. H4350 comes in at a 0.67, so it is the winner as far as accuracy goes on an average. H4350 has definitely earned its reputation here, and my data is backing it up. So that's what I've learned with these powders and everything that I've reloaded this time. I've got some thinking to do about what I want to move on to next. It's definitely going to be some more Hybrid 100V versus H4350, but the 4831's muzzle velocities, they're just not getting me where I need to be. My plan is to go out and shoot this thing 1 mile, so I definitely got to get something that shoots a little bit quicker than what 4831 is getting me to. I appreciate you guys sticking with me this far. I hope you learned something, and I hope that I help you find an alternative powder to 4350 if, like me, it's hard for you to find it. So Hybrid 100V is looking like a great alternative. You can get some great accuracy out of it, like I showed you with those first fouling rounds out of this gun. Well guys, that's it for my first trip out with the Uintah Precision UPR-10 chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. My plan is to go shoot extreme long range with the 6.5 Creedmoor, and I'm real excited to do so. So thank you for your time. Please check out Uintah Precision, atlasdg.com, and anybody else I mentioned in this video. So hope you guys get similar results with what I'm doing. I appreciate your time, and we will talk to you later.
Triggers. Huh.
Okay, throw another one in.
Oh yeah.